I'm here to talk about my adventure gardening with teenagers. Now, it really is urban agriculture we're talking about. It just happens that I decided to include teenagers because I'm a little crazy. And as he said, I was a teacher for 8 years at Scavo High School. And in the last 2 years, created, with the help of many community members, which I may forget to mention a few, a garden with my students. So this is one of the things, not to give away the ending, but we were successful, as you can see here. We did get some things planted. I realized that, are there any teachers here today? You might have, I see a couple of hands. All right. Now I realize that most of us here, and including myself now, are not teachers, nor would you, maybe you're not interested in committing to a project of this size, but certainly there are some things that you can take from this. So I would ask you today, or invite you to really take a look and decide, what's one thing you could take from my experience that would inspire you to be healthier, to grow your own food, or to help somebody else do that. Now, my mission for this garden was to produce healthy food that kids could try and that they could prepare. Also to give back to the food bank. We gave several pounds of fresh food, which you can do, to the food bank of Iowa. And also to use this as a teaching tool for other curricular areas. And some people didn't believe that that was possible. Food and the garden do actually go hand in hand. Believe it or not, it's true. I mean, there were people who wondered that. So I knew that there are several student or school gardens around in the neighborhood. But I knew my kids needed this probably more than any others. At least half, and that's just very low estimate, of our students are on free and reduced lunch and are on food assistance. And you can argue that, yes, they do have access to fresh food. But I can assure you that when I was a teenager, I did not run down to the farmer's market and get a basket of produce and go home and make fresh food for my family. And I grew up on a farm. And my kids aren't doing that. They're not going to take the Metro bus down to the grocery store and prepare foods. In fact, many of them didn't even realize that which food is a fruit or a vegetable. I've had kids ask me, is a strawberry a vegetable? I'm serious. Didn't know an artichoke or an eggplant, and these are all things that are present in my refrigerator most of the time. And it seems like if we didn't have a meat-centered meal, that everyone seemed to be allergic to it. So I knew we have to do, it's true, I mean every 17-year-old at Scavo Alternative High School is indeed allergic to onions, apparently. So, onions, yes, it's true, onions, and maybe celery and carrots sometimes, who knows, depends on the kid. I'm a true believer that you get out as much as you put into an activity. And what I realize is that my kids, how do you give when you don't really have anything to give? So, for years we'd done volunteering, but I thought, what else could we do? So I said a garden is a good thing. They get to create something, and they get to give it back. And it's such a huge learning experience. And I've tried to instill, we don't want to be takers. And this is a wonderful opportunity to give back to, and they got to take produce home too. So, moving on. We did indeed, in my 7th year of teaching, move to a school that had an abundance of grass, more than we needed. In fact, there was an elementary football team who practiced there, and I knew right away I was going to need to mark my territory. So I asked my administrator, this is when I was still asking before doing things, and I asked, so I did, I was like, hey, should we have a garden? I learned. We should have a garden here. And he's like, okay, I love the guy. He's like, I'll find out what we need to do. A few weeks later, I do indeed have approval, but there are a few rules, of course, and one of them, it has to be in a shape that would be easy to mow around, okay? We had to have it 20 feet from the parking lot and from fences, got it. And then we were not able to grow anything that was over 3 feet tall. And I thought, okay, I'll say all right to that, because by the time something's 3 feet tall, it's too late. What are they going to do, right? And so, what in the, even tomatoes are over 3. But okay, yeah, I wouldn't want to create an eyesore for Des Moines Public School. I hope there's no one here that from Des Moines Public School that could be important to my career here in Des Moines. As you can see, I did get some buy-in, but it was not that easy with my students. I love teenagers, but my goodness, I'm so unpredictable at times. So after I got approval, I said, this is going to be the best day ever. I'm going to win that Golden Apple Award. And I got my first foods class, and I said, all right, guys, I'm going outside. We've got a surprise. Walked them across the parking lot. I'm walking in the middle of the grass, and I'm right in the middle of where the garden's going to be. I turn around to give them the fantastic news, and not a single kid had walked from the parking lot onto the grass. They all were standing over there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing over there? I'm like, people probably are watching this and wondering that I've lost control of the classroom. They didn't want to get their shoes dirty. And I respect that. I do. I should have gave them some warning. But I also knew that I was going to definitely, I was going to need some help. So as you can see here, we did get some buy-in. Borrowed shovels, had some donated, and we started a perimeter the fall before the garden went in. And I think maybe they were just tired of sitting in the classroom and they decided to help me out. But however it worked out, I'm glad that it did. So at this point, I started talking about it. And I was involved in a not-for-profit called Urban Ambassadors. And you may recognize, there's going to be a few people on here. There's a couple people in the audience that I know. I'm like, oh, yeah, your picture's up there. Sorry. So the gentleman here is Drew Mayfield. He's involved in Urban Ambassadors and one of our students. And Drew was my right-hand man. I could not have done this without him. He organized landscape architects, community members, gardeners, farmers. He is involved in the community garden in the East Village. And it was amazing. The one thing that was amazing to me is that there were kids who didn't want to get their shoes dirty still, but also they still wanted help. So we had teams of media kids, design, kids who did want to work in the garden, and also kids who wanted to implement it into the classroom too. So Danny's out there. Danny's in the house right here. Danny Hagan from Community Youth Concept was also a part of this and helped us write a grant. So we earned $5,000. However, we didn't get that money until the following winter. But imagine that excitement. And we finally settled on a design, which was just such a struggle. But it's a square, which is easily mowed around, by the way. So. By this point, once we had some media attention, we got a few more volunteers. This angel shows up, Ray Mailer. I don't know if he's in the audience. Many of you might know him. But I wasn't even in school one day, and I got back, and they said, someone showed up, has a tractor, tilled up the garden, and I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? So he shows up again, and this time he has some horse manure. We're just going to start composting. We've just got, you can imagine, okay, I'm a farm kid, so I'm used to this, but I had 6 boys that morning, and they walked out, and they're like, oh no, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm not dressed for this, but I got myself a pitchfork, and I was shoveling horse poo all morning, and they hopped in and they did it. So yeah, those shoes got dirty. You know they did. And then this is when I learned to not ask first, because this is one of my students running heavy equipment. Yeah. So we all know that. You're like, oh, sorry, didn't know. Darn it. But John, this kid, John, I'm telling you, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. So, alrighty. Moving on. So you're wondering, yes, did we get the garden? And you betcha we did. This is our first spring planting. And we did the tomatoes, zucchini, a watermelon, you name it. Obviously, pumpkins we had. Most of these, since we did not have any money yet, were donated by teachers. Michelle Beshen, who does Be Organic, many seeds came from her. And we just started doing it, and I think that's been a problem in my life. I'm like, let's try something. And then you just go for it, and what happens, happens. So, and the kids, after a while, they bought in. I kind of got in a little trouble because more kids wanted to be out in the garden than in school. And, now I wish, why am I not doing this still? This is so much fun. I forgot how much fun this was. So then somebody says, who's taking care of it in the summer? Well, I like to have my summers off. So which didn't really work. I took care of it. We got volunteers. Danny from Community Youth Concepts lined up staples and the food corps. Kids came out. Just really quickly, this is one of my former students. I think he's about 23 now. He has come out and helped in the garden so many times. He's brought his little brother, Jesus, with him. And he actually did a student TED Talk. So love this kid. So we also had, during the harvest, we were able to produce, pestos and margarita pizza, and you name it. We probably supplied most of our produce through, I'd say the first 3 months of school, plus still able to give things to the food bank. My kids are there too. The garden got a little old for them. Now this is not my garden, but if you're thinking, okay, what can I do? I'm not going to start this. I'm not going to make a huge garden. I live in an apartment building, so things that you could do that have a big impact that are small. I feel like my mom, she loves row crops, but she also gardens at an elderly couple's home, and she splits the crop with them. You could do the same thing with potted plants. You could have split with your neighbors. You grow only tomatoes, your neighbor grows only peppers. So you have less to think about, but yet you're sharing. And we all know about the farmer's market and the CSA, many things you can do to eat healthy and do better for the world. It's your choice. So let's see. Also raised beds, of course. You can plant about in an old boot if you want. And if you're wondering if we broke that 3-foot rule, we most certainly did. Those are my boys, little farmer boys here. And we had sunflowers and just about anybody you can think of that would grow over 3 feet, we had it. So thank you so much for having me here today.